Okay, here in the amendments to the Constitution, the very first amendment, and I think it was first not just out of pure chance, it's because of its first in priority and importance. And it reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And I do not see any asterisks that says, then at the bottom of the page stating, well, except when someone is making a joke about there being some other way to make it invalid way to vote for an election. There's nothing there, and there's no asterisks saying that you can't exercise freedom of speech when if you're sowing discord. There's no asterisks, no exceptions. It's unequivocal. You can see there. I don't know if you can see there. There's no asterisks. Now, it seems like the priority here should be the protection of freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Now, I would say freedom of press. Well, I mean, today the internet is the main form of publishing information and spreading ideas, information, false or not. And again, the First Amendment doesn't say, well, we only protect the true press is spreading true information. It's unequivocal. It's just freedom of the press, and the press, in principle, is just in that case it was actually a printing press. At that time, in the founding of the nation, it was a printing press was the means of reproducing information and spreading it to the public. So as to make public, it's really just that's what publication is. Whether or not you go through a professional publisher, but today, anytime you're reproducing information, if you're posting something online, that's still publication. You're making something public, and you're reproducing it via the internet. And so really, anybody that posts anything online is a published author. And you're a member of the press. You're reproducing some ideas or information, true or just whether it's maybe deceptive or not. It's still you're a member of the press. Whether here on the First Amendment, once again, it doesn't say, well, only the professional press that's protected. No, it's unequivocal. Freedom of the press, freedom of speech. So either way, it's protected. And there's no, like I said, there's no asterisks on here saying, well, except for these cases. So like in the past, there's been instances during times of war where I think it's even the Supreme Court so-called justices. I would refer so-called Supreme Court, so I call it the U.S. Inferior Court, and made up of the injustices who come up with these dubious arguments, and they actually supported in the past cases where people have been prosecuted for I think there was one situation where the people were giving flyers out to, like in World War I, they were giving flyers to draft inductees and arguing in the flyer. They're arguing that the draft was equivalent to slavery, which has been in one of the amendments was declared it was forbidden by the Constitution in one of the amendments. The amendment that outlawed slavery, and that effectively the military draft was effectively slavery. That's what they were handing out, but it was prosecuted. Those people that gave the flyers out, they're prosecuted for what they were doing, because the argument was because of time of war, they presented a clear and present danger, as though there's any such exception in the Constitution, which of course there is not. But yeah, I think some of the inferior court injustices would claim in such instances it was that was comparable to crying fire in a crowded theater when there was no fire. But there could be, I acknowledge there could be made exceptions to the First Amendment in such instances as crying fire in a crowded theater when there is no fire. But you need to be so careful, because once you allow for one exception, then you have these people that are supposedly so wise, they're put on a pedestal, and when obviously they're not, because those are not comparable situations, whereby when you're arguing, you're making arguments against the war against the military draft. So there you have a chance for people to consider the arguments for or against, where in the case of the crying fire in a crowded theater, there's no chance for people to engage in such reflection. It's a exigent circumstance, so maybe allow exception for that, but that should be. But for these judges to claim that there's any comparison to that, to making statements about that are anti-war, for instance, during a time of war, that is obviously very poor reasoning, and they're showing a very lack of wisdom there in making such a claim that there's any kind of comparison. So that's the real danger here, is that there's no. It's so easy to, once these megalomaniacs, you give them an inch, they take a mile, and it's like in the Department of Justice, it's like mice. They're like mice trying to keep testing to find ways to get into a house. It's like my house here. I'm still trying to find ways. I mean, I've had problems with mice getting in, and so I go around the house outside and try to plug up areas where I think they could possibly get in. They can get in real tiny, very tiny openings. I've done, I've pretty much eliminated, kept them out. I do it during the daytime because I don't want to trap them in. I want to keep them outside, because they tend to come in during the night. But every so often, though, I still hear them in the ceiling. I hear some little pitter patter. I know, oh, that's a mouse. How did they get in? I think they keep testing. They keep trying to find any place. They keep looking and looking, searching and searching, for a way to get inside. And that's why the DOJ is the Biden administration. They keep testing ways to get around the Constitution. They're getting away with it. And so they got away with that in the Twitter meme case. Now it's like they're emboldened, and so they got there. Now we just like one step after another. Now there's a case that just came up where they're prosecuting the defendants for, among other things, at least that's what they're being accused of, sowing discord. And so there's how is that sowing discord not protected speech? And of course, it is protected speech. You know, there's always some excuse that can be made for why speech and the freedom of speech and freedom of the press should be restricted. Yeah, I get it. But the thing is, that's just it. There's always going to be some excuse for why our freedoms should be restricted, because we can always come up with some very plausible reason why certain speech could eventually lead to disastrous consequences, including could be possibly even a real insurrection, unlike January 6th, which was really obviously an orchestrated inside job spurred on by government agent provocateurs. And so, but then now you can see their prosecutors from the government, they're milking that for everything it's worth. But you know, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, speech also any speech could eventually lead to, instead of a fake insurrection, you could have a real insurrection. You could have a real revolution. All sorts of doom and gloom scenarios could plausibly happen as a result of free speech and freedom of the press. But that at the same time, that's why you know these megalomaniacs in government, they can always come up with some excuse why the speech should be restricted, because of course there can always come up with as to why though that speech could lead to these horrible consequences. But of course, the real reason is because the megalomaniac in power in the government wants to have power over the people to compensate for their inadequacies, feelings of inadequacy, feeling of need for. Yeah, they're just like little children that had for some reason they never felt validated. And they're looking for and they could only find validation if they have power over others. And so they need to have that power, and so they can. But of course, the people will never give them that power if the person in power says, "Well, I have these feelings of inadequacy, so I need to put my boot down on you, all you plebs, so that I can compensate for that feeling of inadequacy that I've always felt in my life." No, people would never give them that power for that. So the megalomaniac in power has to come up with some excuse as to why they need to, why they have to put their boot down on you. They say, well, it's to prevent an insurrection or something, or protect the election process. That, oh yeah, we're going to have real problems with the election, where if we don't restrict speech, restrict people from saying certain things about the election or about a candidate, or if we say if we don't stop people from sowing discord, well, that could happen. We could have an insurrection if there's too much discord that's been sown. And so we gotta stamp down on that, right? You're gonna want us to let you plebs, you're going to want us to give us the power here so that we can keep the discord down and keep an insurrection from happening. You know, so that's they're always going to find it. So yeah, that's why the First Amendment, no asterisks. They made it unequivocal. Why the freedom of the speech, freedom of the press. That's why the founders, they knew this danger here of the megalomaniacs gravitating into positions of power, even because the rest of us, without without those inferiority complexes, they know. The founders knew that we just want to live our lives. Oh, go about our business. we have no interest in compensating. We don't have that need to compensate for inadequacy by going into positions of power over others. So, but yeah, they knew that there's going to be people. There's going to be a number of people that do have those inferiority complexes. So they develop this megalomania. They need have this lust for power over others to compensate for those feelings of inadequacy. And the only way to stop them from taking advantage of people and exploiting people to feed their lust for power is to make an unequivocal guarantee of the freedom of the speech and freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble peaceably, and it was without exception. But the thing is, yeah, like they have that example of the crying fire in a crowded theater. Well, if you give one exception, we've already seen that's led to you give an inch, the megalomaniacs take a mile, and they just run with it. And so maybe you shouldn't even give that inch, and just if that becomes a problem where somebody does cry fire in a theater, maybe that should be counted as protected speech, unless let's wait for it to actually become a serious problem before we even restrict that. To say, okay, maybe we'll allow that exception to the First Amendment, but let's at least wait till we see that as a serious problem. I've never heard of it actually happening. I've never heard of it actually happening. And so why is this exception always brought up? And in all the years of I think that would be the sort of thing that would be widely publicized if it were to actually happen. Considering how little criminals abide by the law, and even when there's harsh punishments. So if this was such a danger, why won't they'd still be doing it anyways? Even if it was against the law, we'd still be hearing about it happening. But I've never heard of anybody crying fire in a crowded theater. I've never heard of it. So if anybody's watching this video and has heard of that happening, and you can give I don't think you allow putting links in comments anymore, unless it's a link to another YouTube video. But if you just give a date and time of it happening, I've never, at least not in my lifetime, I've never heard of it happening once. So maybe we should just not even allow that exception to the First Amendment. So instead just pretty much free speech all around. And I suppose there's exceptions also in cases of fraud, financial fraud, and where somebody's obviously doing it to make money. That's a whole other story. But of course, there's going to be money transacted, and the fraud should be obvious. So about that's a whole different matter from political speech. Financial fraud. I think that can be easily delineated between financial fraud and speech and political speech fraud, alleged fraud. So I think when it comes to political speech, that should be really First Amendment protected, no exceptions when it comes to political speech. And obviously in the case of the Twitter meme case, that was obviously political speech. It was a political realm. It was not financial fraud. And also in this case, this recent case, that just came up very, very recently, in the last couple of days. It's the Department of Justice is charging this group with a Yeah. I mean, I don't know if exactly the charges are sowing discord, but that's included in the Department of Justice's official press release or statement on it. And you can be found on Twitter, I believe, is that they were, the official post on Twitter is that among the accusations is this group of people were sowing discord, which of course is I think we should obviously is protected speech. It's political. That would be considered political speech, and so that is clearly and distinctly a something that's protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution. But the Department of Justice seemed to be just testing like the mice, trying to get through the poke hole, get around the Constitution, find any little crack and cranny to get around the Constitution, and to take away our guaranteed rights. And that's really, isn't that treason itself? And they're taking down the last vestiges of what constitutes the United States of America in its original form is the Constitution of the United States. After that, I mean, once that's gone, there will be no different than any other dictatorship in any other nation. It's the whole experiment of America, of the United States of America is right there in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. With that gone, everything else is gone. There's no uniqueness. There's no fundamental uniqueness to this nation. If that's gone, then I'd say forget about it. We're no longer what we were in the founding of this nation. Once that's gone, once the Constitution is either officially suspended or de facto suspended by just ignoring it, which has been going on, I believe. It's starting to happen more and more frequently, where the Constitution is just being ignored. And that will be effectively the same thing as officially suspending the Constitution. And when they suspend the Constitution, they suspend the United States of America. And so whether it's de facto suspension by ignoring it or just officially suspending the Constitution, so that our whole nation is at risk here of what amounts to a coup d'etat. And that's what's been going on for a long time, I think. Is a certain coup d'etat of overthrowing our original nation. The United States of America is being overthrown by powers that be, namely the deep state. That it's been going on for a very long time, over 100 years, I would say, but has really accelerated with the assassination of JFK by the deep state. They were the real perpetrators of the assassination of JFK. The deep state was, and so then now they've just been increasing it with periodically with different events. They've been accelerating, and that was the main accelerating point, was the JFK assassination. Then after that was 9/11. That was the next step up. The 9/11 inside job, and then after that was the COVID hysteria event, the lab leak event, the planned lab leak event. I'm sure. It's another inside job. Notice how it's accelerating. Now there was about 38 years, was it, between JFK and 9/11, 2001. Then half of 38, that's about 19. So that's about how many years between 9/11 and and then the start of the COVID hysteria inside job lab leak. And now, so now what's half of that would be, yeah, it's about 9 years again, 9.5 years. What's 9.5 years since the beginning of the COVID hysteria? That would be year 2030. We heard of the year 2030, Agenda 2030. So yeah, it's all planned. They're a deep state and working in coordination with the world government folk. The it's the Bilderbergers and the Davos crowd. They're all working together. And then the main thing that I think is they're probably their main obstacle to their agenda is the Constitution. Again, the Bill of Rights of the United States of America. I think that's their biggest. That's the last barrier, the last wall that they need to cross. That's keeping them from their demonic New World Order Illuminati plan for world government dictatorship by the megalomaniacs in power in that New World Order Agenda 2030 people. So yeah, that's if we can protect the Constitution and protect the Bill of Rights, then maybe we can keep them at bay. If not, I'm not confident. Get the sun in my eyes. So that's why it's so urgent that we do protect the Bill of Rights, not just officially, but in effect, we have to actually effectually protect it, keep the make sure it's recognized by the Department of Justice and not just ignored like some historical relic that collects dust in some museum. We actually have to make an effort to actually keep it in force, effectively enforced, and not just ignored by like some historic relic. So that's the main thing I wanted to cover for this presentation speech. And so if you're watching and listening, thanks for watching.